I was in One Oak like in 2014 when Suge Knight got shot, the Tupac's manager.
Holy shit,
Yeah.
you were there?
Chris Brown was at the table next door with Suge Knight.
How does a college student end up running one of the biggest nightclubs in Hollywood?
I feel like the reason why it worked for me, at least, is like I was from here and then I was like first to market. There wasn't really anyone my age doing that. So it was like kind of like a wide open lane. It's all I thought about. It's all I think about still, you know what I mean? So it was just a lot of highs and lows in the beginning. It was super volatile. You know, each year that went by, there was a lot of wins and a lot of losses, but the wins obviously helped. And I just kept leveraging it to do more and more things. I was different than a lot of the other like promoters where I was doing my own events before. So, you know, when I was like 19, like would rent out like Steve Aoki's nightclub, like Dim Max Studios, and book like YG and pay for it all myself and do a Facebook event page and sell tickets. And so I was doing like 300 to like 1,000 capacity rooms. And then by the time I turned 21, I got noticed by all the big like celebrity 21 plus nightclubs. And so I was like always the youngest, like first person in there type vibe. And so I think the way I ended up at like an OffSunset situation is just years of kind of putting myself in the right position and stuff like that.
Where does this drive come from? Because I don't know many other 19-year-olds that are planning parties in Steve Aoki's house to 300 to 1,000 people.
Yeah, well, it was his nightclub. He had his nightclub called Dim Max Studios. I've never been to his house, but maybe it was like a combo of things. But it boils down to like my dad is just like one of the like I don't know if you've ever watched like the Tiger Woods documentary where like
Yeah.
my dad is like very similar to his dad, where like from a very young age, like every day I was like training after school and like when I was like 10, I was a national judo champion. And then like I even qualified for the Junior Olympics. And then like I actually hated it. I don't know what 10-year-old wants to like fight people like on the weekends. Like I just wanted to watch like Pokemon and shit. So I quit. And then like the next day, like he's like, oh, we're gonna play tennis then. And so like I just like always had like this vibe where like I had to like be the best or like I was never enough or like you always have to stay busy. And so, you know, maybe that's it. And then also I just really like loved the event stuff. Like it was just like I was super passionate about it. It like hit very fast. It started working. And maybe it's like a combination of like all those factors. You know what I mean? I don't really know. It's hard to, I had a conversation with someone about this like yesterday or 2 days ago about like what, like why. And it's like, I don't think you could like, it's like trying to go to like a professional like basketball player or soccer player and be like, why are you driven? It's just some people like, or you know what I mean? Like
You know a lot about this. You're driven. You've got a passion for it. But you kind of had this almost in a way revolutionary idea with OffSunset, with like the exclusivity part of it. Why was that the driving force of the brand? Was there a reason, or was it just to stick out a little bit?
before the pandemic, I worked at this mega club called One Oak, and when it was in LA, and you know, that's when like the huge nightclubs were like a thing, and I felt like the scene kind of got washed out, and people wanted more of like an exclusive kind of vibe where, you know, you could go out on any given night there and it was like good networking, good people, good vibes. And so I felt like it was just that particular time in the scene where people wanted a smaller, intimate, more exclusive kind of a vibe.
Just racks my brain that the whole private nightclub in West Hollywood, which is like if you said that out loud, there would be red flags all around it in a big ring. Like people in LA love attention, they love influence, like especially like the celebrities that are going there. They want to be in front of the camera getting their brand out. But was there any kind of like pushback in the early days, like at the very, very beginning, whenever this was being implemented? I know as it went on, this became an established rule. But was there any pushback in the beginning? Was it kind of tough to set that in place?
I would say this also, there's two different kinds of like celebrities or people, I guess, in Hollywood. Your typical like influencer type person or whatever, where they want to be like as famous as possible. And then I feel like there's also the people that are actually famous or whatever and like want to go out and not be seen and like be able to like have a normal night out and like don't want press and all that kind of stuff with it. And so I felt like I was catering more to the latter, where it was like people that, they're like, yeah, I'm famous, but like I don't, want to like go out and like Daily Mail does a whole thing about me or someone's recording me like dancing and they're like, it was more like that kind of a vibe. And so just a different flavor. But One Oak, like for example, was the opposite, but they had real celebrities. It was a whole thing. It was honestly like bigger and more successful than OffSunset, but it was more like in your face, like celebrities here everywhere, cameras,
Yeah.
flashing lights. Whereas mine was more like hush hush, quiet, like no cameras, nothing. So it was just different flavor, different style. But I think
Yeah.
people can appreciate both.
It's kind of funny whenever you think of how you both had success. And obviously, I know now there's different degrees. Like One Oak's like a fucking global phenomenon, but it's quite funny how you both had different levels of success, even though you were on polar opposites of the word. Like it's almost like this study about like the disinhibition effect, which is pretty much when people have too much self monitoring, like people are eyes on them and stuff, they throw away their self worth and they become someone they don't want to be or someone they wish they could have been. But whenever it's like, right, go in here, do what you want, the self monitoring's kind of gone. And it's like, we're not going to take any offense to what you do. We're not going to have people following you around telling you what to do. It's almost like people sit back in it and they can be themselves a little bit. Do you think that maybe helped with like you building these relationships with people in industries?
There's a ton of people that I knew slash like helped out before they were famous or successful, like a Youngblood, right? So there's some people where I actually was more known than they were when I met them, so I have a different kind of relationship with them. But, I didn't try to like rush anything with people. And I also, to like the cold outreach point, always tried to add value. So I never was just like going up to like a major celebrity and be like, hey, what's your number? Like, we should kick it. Like, I always would be like, hey, like, if we were at One Oak, like, I would be like, hey, like, come here. Like, I want to introduce you to so and so because I knew someone else. And then I'd be like, oh, like, if you want, like, text me, like, I'm going to do this event next week or like, so I tried to like, I don't know if like transactional is the right word, but I tried to like, come at it with value. To put it in perspective, right? Like you want to be friends with them because they're them, right? If that's the case, like why do they want to be friends with you? So I try to always have like that mentality where like, all right, I'm going to try to like, hold my own weight or like add just as much value. And so that's kind of how I approached it. But, I'm not like talking to a major celebrity any different than I would like someone I'm like ordering food from in a restaurant. Like you could ask anyone or see like or whatever. Like I'm gonna have the same kind of dialogue whether you're this or that, So that's kind of like how I try to run my ship.
I want to touch on the music aspect a little bit because you mentioned obviously working with Youngblood and you worked with him from quite early on, to be honest, in his career, and you obviously have been like credited on Dua Lipa albums and things like that. And I'm always fascinated with people who have been around that level of talent, that level of skill. Give me a little bit of a insight into what it's like being around those kind of people.
Yeah, so with Youngblood, I basically, before working with him, I was just like a big like nightclub promoter. I was working at One Oak and I was working at Tao Group, and basically the president of the label reached out to me like randomly and hired me as an A&R and a manager. And so I wasn't trying to work in music, had no intention to. I didn't even think I was qualified, quite frankly. And so it was super random. And they kind of were like, look through our roster, like pick something you like. And so I kind of was like thinking about different things and I saw like Youngblood and, he had, yeah, like one song out and like 2,000 followers. I think I went to a show that he did at the Viper Room and, yeah, I started basically working on him from there. And that would have been October of 2017 and it moved quick. I mean, I would say by the time like December of 2018, we were already working on a song with like Halsey and Travis Barker, you know what I mean? So we got like some work done in the first year with him. As far as like what it's like to work with these people, he is a star, obviously in his own right, and he's a super driven person, and he would deliver, you know what I mean? Because, you know, I'm the kind of vibe where I knew a lot of people and I could put him in rooms and give him contacts, but he would convert. He would give the goods and he would run with it if I did make intros and stuff like that. I feel like I add value and I'm a star like in my own right, but I also can't create someone that's not a star into becoming a star. I feel like I need to like meet them in the middle, and I can help them and they can help me, and if the two meet in the middle, then you know what I mean? So a lot of, you know, it's just anything in life. A lot of people that are successful, they're successful for a reason. You know, they're driven, they deliver, they're not going to like hiccup or make mistakes or that often, or you know what I mean? So that's kind of my interpretation of it.
Kind of recently he shot into that stardom now, but could you see it back then that he had it on him?
I didn't really know. Like, if anything, I was more just worried. I was like, I really hope this works, because otherwise, I'm gonna look like the idiot, like promoter guy that tried to do music, you know.
Yeah.
So I more was just nervous about it not working and me losing my job. I wasn't really even thinking about him in particular. It was just like a lot on the line, kind of at that time, because it was a big opportunity and I didn't want to like get fired and then have to go back to doing the nightclub stuff. So I was thinking about other things at that time.
Were you done with Nightclub at that point? You mentioned that you didn't want to go back. Were you in your mind finished with it?
My biggest worry, you know, when you're like a promoter, you're kind of like a rapper, like an artist or something. You're only like hot for like a couple years and then someone new kind of takes your place, right? So I kind of like always had that in the mind where I was like, oh, like I gotta figure out the next thing, because like I'm gonna be washed if I stay in this. So, you know, it wasn't that I had left nightlife. It's just I felt like, you know, working at Interscope or Universal and in the music was like the clear next step. And then I didn't want to feel like I lost that opportunity and then backtracked or something.
Which industry is shadier, nightlife or music?
It's different. The nightlife industry, there's not really that many contracts. It's all like handshake deals, and it's more like the wild west. The music industry, you're dealing with contracts and lawyers and record label executives and masters points and publishing points, and it's just like a way trickier thing to navigate. You know what I mean? So if you're not careful in the music industry, like you could get your artist side swiped from you or this or that. Whereas the nightclub stuff, like it's more just like, do you have the crowd? Are you hot? Like, is it, you know what I mean? So it's two different things. I still maybe would say the nightclub industry is a bit shadier though.
Why? What leads you to that decision apart from behind the back handshake deals?
Because you can like line things up properly in music and then you're like in the situation. You know what I mean? Whereas with the nightlife, it's not as clear cut. And so if you like lose a couple key celebrities or this or that, or the club isn't as hot anymore, like you can go from like being very poppin' to like not popping at all. And then you're like kind of done. Whereas music, like you could have a few different acts and, you know, one is popping and then one's like medium pop. Like it's just easier to kind of float and bounce back and stuff like that.
You mentioned earlier that in LA, it's kind of like split down the middle in terms of people with fame. Like there's the influencers and there's the actual celebrities. But when your selling point of a nightclub is exclusivity and privacy, how do you make sure you get the right people in there? Because that in itself makes it quite a statement, which I imagine those influencers are drawn towards.
Well, especially with like a small venue like OffSunset, it was only like 150 people. It was really just like me and my partners just texting the people we knew. You know, we're all of us were either in nightlife or music. So like one of my partners, I worked with him at One Oak, and my other partner, I worked with him at the record label. And so we all knew these people, like had worked with them professionally or as friends. And so it was more like, you know, in the beginning, we like met up for lunch and just were like, okay, you're going to text these people for opening night. I'm going to text these people. And we kind of came like a melting pot of like people. But, you know, as far as the exclusivity part, it took a while for the for other people to find out about it anyways. And from there, I mean, you just got to lean on having a good door person and making sure that we're on it, texting good people and keeping the vibe like the way that we want it and stuff like that. But I wasn't like anti-influencer either. You know, like, I'm sure there was like a ton of like YouTubers and TikTokers in there too. It's just like, I feel like in the beginning with the nightclubs, you really gotta launch it with like a high pedigree, because if you don't start with the A plus, then the A plus people will be like, oh, place is whack, like I'm not gonna go there. You get what I'm saying? So you got to start really high and be strict, and then after a few years it starts to trickle. That's kind of like my interpretation of the nightlife.
I had a conversation with a nightclub owner a while ago. He owned a nightclub somewhere in Europe, but I couldn't believe how much psychology goes into the nightclub thing. Because he spoke about he would hire artists from around the area to come and be in the nightclub, and then as a trade-off, he would play their like new or unreleased music in the nightclub. So it would drive almost like there's a listening party, or he would say to the person, bring everyone you know to make it look more packed. So people would see it outside and go, right, we need to be in there. For some reason, everybody's in there. We need to go. Did you find the same thing, that you were probably shocked by the psychology going into it?
It's all optics. It's all optics and psychology. That's all that the night, like, especially like not as much the events I was doing when I first started, except I guess like, you know, I would invite like 100,000 people to like the Project X event page or certain things. So I guess people would be like, this is crazy, like I have to go. But like the nightlife stuff like that, yeah, it's all optics. People like need to feel like it's sick and like exclusive and like this and that. It's all like, I don't know if like if facading is like the right word, but it's like very optics based.
How would I ask this without getting us both cancelled or somebody booting down my door? But I'll use, for example, things like P. Diddy and stuff. You hear the things he was up to in nightclubs and stuff. Are you kind of at a point seeing those, taking a big deep breath, thanking your stars, prioritize privacy and actual decent people whenever you see that? Because I imagine handling stuff like that from a promoter's standpoint must be hell.
At least for me, and what I have noticed, you know, successful operators in the hospitality business, they don't actually party. So a lot of them, if you notice, like don't really drink or do anything else. And so I've been sober since I was 19. So was like going to like crazy shit like that. Like, you know what I mean? And especially like at OffSunset, like I just kind of would show up at 11 or midnight or whatever, make sure all the people get in. And by 2 o'clock, like I'm basically just going home, you know, unless it's like a really big like after party or something that's like for a movie premiere, like, so, you know what I mean? But like I'm not really like partaking in like you know what I mean? So I think it just kind of depends how you get down. But a lot of the successful people I've noticed, especially a lot of the big operators, like the people that own like Live or Tao Group or any of those ones, like they all like have like wife and kids and aren't really like, you're not gonna like see them like ripping like alcohol shots at the table or do you know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
yeah, I don't really think any of them are too worried about stuff like that.
You must have at some point found a troublemaker in the off sunset. Maybe someone didn't comply with the rules or something like that, have you?
I mean, yeah, like there would always be like fights breaking out sporadically from time to time. But I've been around some crazy shit, dude. I was in One Oak like in 2014 when there was a shooting. Like I was
Jeez.
that guy Suge Knight got shot. The Tupac's manager.
Yeah. Holy shit,
Yeah.
you were there.
Yeah. I was young, dude. It was 2014, so I was probably like 22, and so I was I was at like one table, and then Chris Brown was at the table next door with Suge Knight, and because he was performing that night. And I saw like a couple people, it looked like I thought someone was like drunk and like fell off the table or something like that. And then all of because I guess like when there's a shooting in a nightclub, right? Like you don't even know if like the gunshot's part of a song or something. I heard a couple pops, but like it could have just been like part of a Chief Keef song or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like I didn't really, it doesn't really register, right? So like I heard a couple pops and I saw someone fall or whatever, like, and I, you know, didn't really think anything of it. It was like, oh, okay, like rap song, maybe someone slipped or whatever. And then all of a sudden everyone drops to the floor and then the music stops and then people just start running out. You know what I mean? So yeah, I've been like around some like crazy stuff before. Like I was definitely that happened. That was like a big thing.
When you see something like that, like even if you see like two big names everybody would know kind of squaring off with each other, ready to go at each other, are you kind of like sitting back, like panicking a little bit? Like, if there's even one camera anywhere here, we are all going to be questioned by everyone tomorrow, because it must give you a little bit of fear at least.
I mean, like in that situation, my initial thought was just I need to get out of here. Like I promise you I was probably like the second or third person out of that club when that happened. But I wasn't like worried about that, people getting questioned. You know what I mean? It was just
Yeah.
more like I'm just happy I'm alive and like I want to be out of, you know what I mean? So I don't remember the exact dynamic, but I think like I don't even know who did it. I don't know. I don't remember like information about it, but I remember Chris Brown was like performing that night, and then Suge Knight, I think, was the one that got shot. So I think like some random person went in there and did it or something like that. So don't, I wasn't even thinking like that. I was like, I just need to get out of here. This is crazy.
When you're around this life that you've had, I mean, it's filled with things like people would reach for in your industries, things like fame and status and reputation and money that comes with it, stuff like that. But you can tell from the way you speak that it's almost never even touched the sides of you. Like, you haven't even let it open the door. How do you balance just kind of staying driven and staying humble during these times? Because it's like, from the outside looking in, it would look like you have all the things people would want.
I did a lot of it like at ground zero, like figuring it out myself, right? And so in my mind, like on the outside looking in, it looks maybe like it's like a steady growing stock or something like that from the beginning to where it is now. But there was like so many times where I thought it was like completely over or like I lost this or I lost that. And like I'm honestly just pretty beat down from the whole thing, and I'm just kind of like grateful that I like am still here type vibe, you know? So I don't get like too caught up in all that. And then, I've been doing it for so long that it's just kind of like normal. Like I don't think about it any different than you would if like you were just interviewing a bunch of people on your podcast and then all of a sudden it starts being like huge and huge people. You're just like, I mean, we started interviewing these people and now I'm doing this, but like it's just, you know what I mean? So it's not, it's just it's like a forever journey, I guess. And I still feel like I'll still look at way more successful people like a Steve Jobs or a Elon Musk or whoever, and it's like I'm not anything compared to them, right? So I don't really know what the point of having a big head is.
I've said this so many times, but like the people that came on the show and that have achieved things, like, you would almost never know they done it because they don't speak about it. And I said it to you before we start recording, like, trying to find information and use it, it's trying to get blood out of a stone because you don't brag about these accomplishments. But so, and there's this kind of idea of people are too much driven to not make rash decisions when they're feeling down, but they forget that you also shouldn't make rash decisions when you're up at the heights, because again, you're acting with emotion, which you shouldn't do. Are you constantly reminding yourself to not get ahead of yourself whenever you're in those moments where it's high and when it's low?
Now, at least, I've been through so many highs and lows that I just understand the cycle more. And I know that if I do go through a low, I usually bounce back bigger. I don't drink and all I do is work. So I know that like I'm putting the work in and I'm consistent and it's par for the course, like the highs and the lows. But I would say it's easier now. Like there's definitely when I was younger times where I was like, oh, this is over. Like I don't know if I'm going to recover from this, especially like even like a COVID type situation where 2019 I was probably the biggest I had been. I was doing One Oak and Avenue, and I was at the record label, and Youngblood had just released a song with Halsey that year, and I had gotten that song placed on Dua Lipa's album with the producer. And then fast forward to 2020, I'm not at Interscope anymore. The nightclubs are closed, and like there's nothing going on. So um, that was like a time for sure where I thought maybe it was over, I was done. And then OffSunset ends up opening in 2021. So, and that was bigger debatably than some of the other stuff I'd done before that. So it's just kind of how it is.
Talk me through a little bit of how you're feeling and thinking when COVID does strike, because I know for like the rest of us, easing in process in a way where we kind of saw it coming, but for your industry, it was almost like the lights just got switched off one night and that was it.
Everything was done. Everything. There was no more touring. There was no more nightclubs. There was nothing going on. So, and then also I didn't know how long it was going to last. Oddly enough, like I had left the label like in October or November of 2019, and so I had the mindset that I wanted to do my own management company, and so I was already kind of prepped to not make as much money, and then I kind of knew in the back of my head that One Oak was probably going to close because it had been open for so many years. Kind of was already in that headspace, but then it just like got to a point where I think like in March of 2020, just everything shut down, and I was like, this is crazy. Like, to put it in perspective, like Youngblood had like done a surprise set like at Coachella around that time in 2019, and we had just released a song with Halsey and Travis, and then now I'm like in my living room with like no one calling me, nothing going on. I have no job. Like, you know what I mean? So that's like how grim it was.
People that are like in entertainment or hospitality, like it must have been like every worst nightmare possible coming true, because there is no grace period. It is just gone. And that's why I asked you that, because I can never imagine what must the feeling be. Because like you said, like there was really no tell when it was going to reopen.
I had no idea. I had no idea if it was going to last years or 6 months or what was going to happen. And even when my partners were like bringing up the potential of like doing it off Sunset, I just almost didn't even do it. I was like, there's no way this is going to work. Like, I don't want to lose more money. I don't even know if I want to go back into hospitality. Like, I had no idea that that even was going to work. So it was a weird time. I'm happy it ended up happening because that's why I ended up going back to school and all that stuff. But yeah, it was a weird one. That was like one where I thought maybe like it was a wrap and I had gotten lucky before that and stuff.
Always in a way been a promoter. Like, I mean, even before the nightclubs, like the Project X party at 19, which I'm going to touch on before we stop recording, but this came to my head straight away whenever I read about your story, because I always feel like people that do something for an extended period of time and get a good amount of success from it, they almost make it who they are. Like, it's attached to their identity. But you can tell from the way you speak about our industries that you clearly knew what was going on in the way, like the world around you. So you didn't attach it to your personality. How do you like stop the party becoming your identity and like separate yourself from that?
I feel like when Project X did happen, like I did kind of make it my identity that I was doing these like big like events and stuff like that. Like if anything, like, I had no idea that that was going to turn into what it was. I had done like a couple parties before that, and like they were fun and successful and stuff, but like this was different where like there was news cameras there and like someone from the movie was there and like it was like a whole thing. Like it was on World Star Hip Hop and got like 10 million views. Yeah, it was like shit that like I had no idea that like that was going to happen. I kind of made it my identity for a while, actually. Like, that's like what I was doing. I feel like for those, especially where I was doing like mass parties, like I had to like be kind of known and people had to like want to go and stuff like that. So,
Tell me about this Project X party. Was it instantly you knew it was going to happen? How long into the night before you knew this was going to take off? And just what was it like? Tell me everything. I need to know.
so during that time, I was a tennis coach. So I was teaching tennis lessons to pay for the parties. That's how this whole thing started. So, if you're a tennis instructor, like you could make like 20 to 50 bucks cash back then for teaching tennis lessons. And so that's how I was paying for all these things. And so the guy I was teaching tennis lessons to, he was like around my age or a little bit younger. He was like, I want to do a party at my house, and he had like this huge house like in Beverly Hills or something, and so that was how that went down. And then basically we had talked to someone else and they had another house that we were going to do like an after party at. The one thing I'll say about house parties is like they get momentum. Like people love house parties. It's a lot harder to rent like a nightclub and like book an artist and sell tickets and stuff. Like that doesn't have as much hype. Like people will go to house parties, especially like when I had Facebook event pages, like everyone would click attending. It was like easy for it to go viral. So it was just like a perfect concoction. And then the movie Project X came out like that night or that weekend or something. So we had called it Project X, and there was like, it was just like hyped up. And so the cops came, and it was like kind of like a riot or something like that. And there was all this stuff. So it wasn't like planned out.
How did the crowd gather? Was it straight away they all turned up, or was it like, as you talked about the momentum, was there just like a point in the night where you like kind of looked around and went, "This is an insane amount of people. Didn't expect this."
The first party was at the guy's house that I knew. And that one kind of got shut down a little bit early because he lived in the hills in Beverly Hills, and it was like a misty night. And I think someone maybe like hit a car or like something like that. And I think the cops came, shut it down. And then there was a second house lined up that was supposed to be the after party house, and I think like a bunch of people went there, and that's where it got crazy. And I didn't even really make it to that until the like way tail end, because I knew the first kid like that I did it with, and I knew the family, so I wanted to make sure everything was like good. And I think the reason why the second one was where it really blew up is because it was just like 1,000 people driving to a house basically, and it just turned into a full, you know what I mean? That's my guess, at least.
Are you worried when you turn up and see that amount of people?
I mean, I wasn't happy about it. Like, that wasn't like the intention. I was so young though. You got to understand, I was like 19 or something like that. So like, I didn't really like, I wasn't thinking like that at the time.
I have one last question for you, because you mentioned a little bit before already about being around Youngblood and seeing his like traits and stuff like that. And I mean, through your years, you've been like occupied time and company with a lot of people that have done incredible things. And I ask this to everybody who's been around those type of people, because I feel like those type of people have an edge, and there's something that pushes them above the rest. Have you noticed anything that they all kind of share? Maybe it's work ethic, maybe it's mindset, maybe it's just habits, anything like that.
For anyone that's like super successful, like you don't have to worry about them. Like they are going to be successful whether you're helping them or not, or you know what I mean? Like any big artist or any big person like Drake or whoever, like they have another project ready to go. They already have like a plan. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm the same way too. Like, you don't have to worry about me. Like, I already have things in motion. Like, you'll hear about something else, like whatever. Like, I don't need like my handheld. Like, and I think that like a Youngblood or any of these other people, like you can play a role and helping them get there and be part of the team, but like he still would be him with or without you type thing. You know what I mean? Like he's gonna show up to all his shows. He's gonna convert and hit the right notes if you put him in the room with like a Halsey, and he's gonna do this and that and like that. And I think that anyone at that level, like that's just how they are. Like they're gonna deliver the goods. They're gonna have something else lined up, and they don't need anyone to really tell them what to do, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. Would you say it's self-confidence then?
They're just driven individuals that consistently make hits and always have like a idea in their head of where they want to go and like what they want to do. And, you know, you can play a role in helping or not, but they'll probably get there with or without. You know what I mean? And I think that's really like what makes a superstar.
Connor, where can people find you? What have you got going on, and what's coming in the future?
Yeah, so you can look up my website, connortracy.com, on all social platforms like Instagram, TikTok, X. It's all just at the Connor Treacy. And I now am working with my buddy Cameron Dallas. He is a big influencer, and we just started this new company, and I'm managing a bunch of DJs underneath the company. And so we're gonna scale that out, and we're focusing on that right now. We have a few other things. So mainly focusing on music management right now.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I got